Hello friends, welcome to my new learning video. Today we are going to learn singleton design pattern. Okay, from the design pattern there are many interview questions asked, and there is one famous design pattern called singleton design pattern. Okay, so we'll discuss about the singleton design pattern, and there are other design patterns also we'll cover in another video. But today we are going to learn the singleton design pattern, how you can create a singleton class, and how in case of serialization, in case of reflection, and in case of cloning also, singleton property breaks. Okay, means whenever you do serialization, singleton, or reflection, or cloning, then at that time you will get the different object. Okay, so how you can protect in those scenario also, so we'll cover all the things. And I know after going to this video you will be able to answer all the possible questions from the singleton design pattern. Okay, so let's start the design pattern. So what is design pattern? Design pattern basically is defined as a strategy. Okay, देखिए जैसे आप कोई भी काम करने, जब भी आप कोई काम स्टार्ट करते हो, देन फर्स्ट यू डिसाइड लाइक उस काम को कैसे करना है. जैसे आप घर बनाने जाते हो, देन यू फर्स्ट क्रिएट अ ब्लूप्रिंट दैट हाउ व्हाट विल बी द मैप ऑफ योर हाउस. ठीक है, तो आप किस तरीके से उसको बनाने वाले हो इसके बारे में आप पहले डिसाइड करते हो, राइट, सो दैट कि आगे चलकर परेशानी ना हो, राइट. तो डिजाइन पैटर्न भी वही काम करता है. डिजाइन पैटर्न डिफाइंड एज स्ट्रेटजी लाइक हाउ यू आर गोइंग टू द कोड. ओके, and if there are known problem in the object oriented programming system, then that will be resolved, okay, by using this design pattern. So the only motive of design pattern, so that that you have the predefined strategy for solving the oops design problem. Okay, so design pattern gives you the standard approach. Okay, so just remember this line, and or make this point in your mind that what is the design pattern. Design pattern is basically like that gives you a strategy to solve the known problem of the oops concept. Okay, which gives you some standard approach that how you should proceed in your coding. ठीक है, so when you are using the design pattern, at that time it increases the reusability and easy to maintain. Okay, because when you follow the the design pattern, then how that is being used and how you can reuse those piece of code, that is already defined, so that gives you the reusability and easy to maintain. Okay, and easy to understand and debug the code. So all these features, all these facilities you get to know, and that you can achieve by following the design pattern. So that's why when you start coding, you should understand that how you should coding. Okay, it's not like that कि मन में आया जैसे मन वैसे कोडिंग कर दिया, राइट, ऐसे नहीं करते हम लोग. उसके लिए हम लोग क्या है कि डिज़ाइन पैटर्न फॉलो करते हैं. अगर जहाँ पे भी स्टैंडर्डाइजेशन पॉसिबल हो सकता है, वेदर इट इज़ इन द नेमिंग कन्वेंशन और इट इज़ इन द फॉलोइंग एनी डिज़ाइन पैटर्न, सो व्हाट एवर वी डू वी शुड डू दैट. ठीक है, ओके. सो डिज़ाइन पैटर्न, so there are three types of design pattern basically. Okay, creational design pattern, structural design pattern, and behavioral design pattern. ठीक है, creational means creational design pattern belongs to instantiate the object, how you should create object and how you should instantiate, okay, that object. So that comes under the creational design pattern. So there are many creational design pattern also, more than 5. Okay, so there are many design patterns which define that how you should create object. Okay, how you should instantiate the object. So that comes under the creational. In a structural, it gives you that how you can create a structure of your coding. Okay, that if you are creating some classes, then should you use the abstraction or like that. There are many structural design pattern that you should use. Okay, so that the reusability can happen. So how the structure should be of your program, so that is decided in the structural design pattern. ठीक है, and in the behavioral design pattern, it provides a solution for best approach of interaction between objects and loose coupling. ठीक है, and flexibility of code also. सो बिहेवियरल आपको ये बताता है कि आपके प्रोग्राम कैसे बिहेव करना चाहिए. जैसे कि ऑब्वियसली देयर आर जस्ट नॉट गोइंग टू बी वन ऑब्जेक्ट, राइट, देयर कैन बी मल्टीपल, देयर विल बी मल्टीपल ऑब्जेक्ट्स, राइट. सो हाउ दोज विल बी इंटरेक्टिंग, how the code will be loose coupling, like let's say in future some enhancement is coming up and your code is tight coupling, then you have to change all the code, right. So behavioral design pattern gives you some features that you can make your code loose coupling, so that in future if you are making any change in the in any piece of code, then does not will not affect the most part. Okay, that will affect as a single entity. So that behavioral design pattern works. Okay, so we will learn all these design patterns: creational, structural and behavioral. But today we will focus on the creational, and in creational we will focus on the singleton design pattern. ठीक है. So this is a singleton design pattern starts. Okay, so singleton design pattern is a creational design pattern. As I told you, there are different methods. Okay, so singleton means as name specifies that whenever you are trying to get the object of that singleton class, all the time you will be getting just one reference. Okay, let's say there is an student class. Okay, for example, there is an student class, and if that student class is singleton, then and you are getting the instance of student 10 times. Okay, so all the time you will be getting the same instance, not the different. So when you compare student 1 equal to student 2, then it will be true. Student 2 equal to student 10, then it will be true. So that means that is singleton design pattern. So I hope you can understand now that singleton design pattern is basically it gives you facility to always get the same instance. ठीक है, जब अगर आपका कंसेप्ट क्लियर है कि मुझे ऑल टाइम जस्ट एक ही ऑब्जेक्ट क्रिएट करना है, देन एट दैट टाइम यू शुड क्रिएट सिंगलटन डिजाइन पैटर्न. ठीक है. So to create a singleton class, there are 4 ways. There are like classic implementations, like the basic how we should do. There is one synchronized method, means get instance method that will be synchronized, and the eager instantiation and the double checked locking. Okay, so we'll cover all these 4 way that we can create a singleton class. So that is the first method, classic implementation. ठीक है. सो क्लासिक मेथड में जैसे कि आप मान लो कि सिंगलटन क्लास क्रिएट कर रहे हो, तो आप एक सिंपल क्लास अपने सिंपल क्लास क्रिएट किया. ठीक है. नाउ हियर यू हैव टू डिफाइन वन स्टैटिक प्रॉपर्टी ऑफ द टाइप सिंगलटन क्लास. ठीक है. सो मैंने यहाँ पे एक इंस्टेंस क्रिएट किया दैट इज नॉट इनिशियलाइज्ड. ओके, प्राइवेट, दिस इज अ प्राइवेट प्रॉपर्टी, दैट मीन्स इट विल नॉट बी एक्सेस्ड डायरेक्टली आउटसाइड ऑफ द क्लास. So just you have to always remember, in singleton class, if you are making any singleton class, then you should not create the constructor or any instance variable as public or protected. That will be always private, so that you cannot get the value directly from outside of the class. To access this, you will have one get instance method that will be public and static. Okay, this is the must scenario. So here I have created one reference variable of the singleton class. So singleton class, that is private, means will not be accessed outside. This is static, means to access this no need, I don't need the instance, I can directly access using the singleton class reference. ठीक है. So private static singleton object. Now private singleton, this is a constructor. You can see here that constructor is also private. If I will not make this constructor a private constructor, then from outside of the class you can create an object using this default constructor or no parameterized constructor or no arg constructor. ठीक है. So this is the private constructor. You cannot create object from outside. Okay. Now this is the get instance method, that will be the public, so that you can access the instance, so that you can get the instance, where I have given a type singleton because the class name is singleton. If it will be student, then here type will be also student. ठीक है. So public, static. So this is the public, means that can be accessed from outside also. Static means to get this get instance method, I don't need to create object, because I have made this constructor private, so I cannot create object of singleton class from outside, right? So I have to use this get instance method so that I can get the reference, I can get the type of singleton class object. ठीक है. So here I have given public static singleton, that is the return type. Get instance is any method. Okay, you can give any method name, that doesn't matter, the get instance. Okay, so get instance method I have written over here, and inside this I am checking if object equal to null, because the very first time, see this is the object, This is the, what type of variable it is. It is instance variable. No, this is the static variable, right? Because I have given here the static. So private static singleton class type, right? So any object type, the default value will be null, right? So if object equal to null, so very first time it will be null, right? And the object equal to new singleton. So I am inside the class, so I can use this constructor, right? Here I have written dot dot dot. That means that if you want to do anything in this constructor, then you can do. Okay? But that will be called internally only, from this class only, not from the outside. So if object is null, then I am creating the object of singleton class. Okay? And after that I am returning the object. So the very first time I got the object, since it is null, I created the object. Now assume that what will happen if I call this the second time. The second time what will happen, it will check again for, I am calling this get instance method, it will check for object is null or not. So object is not null, right? Because this is a static variable and I have initialized the very first time, right? So it will not go in this block. In the if block it will not go, right? And it will directly return the object. So the existing object will be returned, right? So this is the singleton class. All the time I am getting the singleton object, right? So this is the way that you can create any singleton class. I hope you are understanding now, right? What is the meaning of singleton and how you can create a singleton class. Now let's move to the second method, that how the other way to create singleton. If you are thinking that if I can create a singleton class, then what is the need of other? So there are some pros and cons of every method, the way that you are creating singleton class. Okay, we'll understand with the reference of another way. Okay, so the second way is that using this synchronize. Okay, so understand now that why the synchronize comes in the picture. Okay, when we will learn the multi-threading, at that time we will get to know that what is synchronize. Okay, synchronize is a keyword, okay, that is used in the multi-threading. If I am making this any method or any piece of code as synchronized, then at the same time more than one thread will not be able to access. Okay, other thread will wait, and then once that thread task will be completed, then other thread will can access. So it is some kind of locking. Okay, means if one thread is accessing one time, then at that time other threads will not be able to access. So for now, just you can understand it like this is a locking for that method. Okay, so one time one thread will access. So if I am making this get instance method as synchronize, that means, see, there is everything is same in this class also, right? That there is singleton class, there is singleton object, that is a static static variable, there is one private constructor, and again I am checking here if object is null, then it is I am creating object and returning object. See what is the pros of this method on the first. Okay, here I have not given the synchronization. That means if the more than one threads, if two threads are trying to access the same method, then they can access, because there is no synchronization right now. Okay, so let's say two threads are trying to checking that object is null or not, so both thread will get to know that its object is null, right? Because if the same time the same call will happen, then object will be null by object will be null for both threads, right? So two object will be created now, because both thread is entering in this if block, right? So here it is stopping now. If thread 1 is trying to access the get instance method, then thread 2 will stop. Okay, that thread 2 will not be able to access, so object will be null, then we'll be getting the new object. Once the thread 1 completes its execution, when it comes out of this method, then it will come for then thread 2 will come, and when thread 2 will come, since object is a static variable, right? So object will be null for that thread also, right? It will be not null, right? Because object was initialized by the thread 1, so it will not go inside this, and it will return the same object, right? So that is the advantage in the multi-threading case, from the first method to second method. I hope I am making you clear, right? That why we need to make it synchronized. If you are making it synchronized, then in case of multi-threading also you will be getting the same object. Okay, you will not get the more than one object because this is singleton. So the main property of the singleton class is that you should have always just one object of this class, not more than one. So we have to just restrict in all the scenario that whenever I am trying to get the instance of this singleton class, then all time it should be one, it must be one. Okay, now this is the eager instantiation. Here you can see that here I am writing like private static singleton object equal to new singleton. Here itself I am creating the object. Since this is a private, so it will not be accessed from outside, but here I am starting this because any static variable will be initialized the very first time, right? Before loading, before execution starts, it will be initialized, right? The singleton object we have understand like in the method area we have the at that time only it is initialized, right? All the in the initialization step all the static variables, the real value will be initialized there, right? So it will be initialized the very first time before creating an instance, right? So this is the eager instantiation. Okay, so before there is difference between lazy loading and the eager loading. Eager loading happens the very quickly and lazy loading happens when you call, right? Here you can see that I am getting the singleton class object when I am calling the get instance method, but here I will be getting like before calling the get instance method. But since this is private, so I cannot get this object from outside. Okay, so this is the private singleton, private static synchronized. Here again I have make this synchronized. Okay, synchronized singleton get instance. So whenever I am calling this object, at that time I will be getting the same object. Okay, that will be the new singleton that is eagerly initiated. Okay, so when you have the need that there is no problem in the eager instantiation, then you can follow this approach. Okay, so first approach and second approach follows the lazy loading principle, but the third approach is following the eager instantiation, eager loading principle. Okay, now this is the double checked locking. Okay, what is the meaning of double checked locking? Double checked locking means in interview it is asked like what is double checked locking, how you can create singleton class using this double checked locking. Okay, so I have created this class singleton and I have the created this static volatile singleton object equal to null. Okay, here you can see that I have added one more keyword volatile. For now just understand it again, this is used in the multi-threading. Okay, we'll understand the volatile and the synchronized in another session. So here for now just you remember that volatile and synchronized we have used in the for the multi-threading purpose. Okay, so private static volatile singleton object equal to null. Here we have initialized the object value as null. Okay, if you will not initialize then also it will be null, right? Because this is a static, the default value. So this is the get instance method, public static singleton get instance. So here I have defined public static singleton instance. Here you can see that I have not used the synchronized keyword in the at the method level, at the method declaration, right? That means if synchronization is required where like there is a problem of the real problem of the multi-threading. Okay, that means if I am using this synchronization at method level, then whole piece of code will be blocked for that by that thread, by the running thread, right? Other thread will not be able to access anything, will not be able to enter in inside this method. So here I have removed the the synchronization. Okay, now if object equal to null, so if object is null, the very first time it will be null, right? And then inside this I have used this synchronized over the class, right? Synchronized inside that singleton.class I have written. So this is the first checking, right? If object is null, this is the first checking. Okay, this is the first checking. Now synchronized synchronized block, again I am checking if object is null. So this is the double checking. Okay, because why the very first time it will be null. Okay, the very first time it will be null, this is the synchronization. If the second time it will be also null, right? And object equal to new singleton, I got the object. Okay, I am returning the object. But now think when the second time I am calling the get instance method. So when I am calling second time, it will check object is null or not. if object is not null, then it will not go inside this complete block. Okay, so the execution time will be minimal and it will directly return the object, right? So if there are 10 threads running, okay, 10 threads are trying to call this get instance method. So the for very first thread that the thread 1 is calling, for that it will go inside and it will get the object. And when thread 2, thread 3 are calling at same time, then there will be no blocker, because the here no synchronization has been used, and thread 2 and thread 3 will found that object is not null and it will directly get the object, right? So for the first time it will be locking, but for other time other thread will not, will be locked, right? So this is the best approach you should follow while creating the singleton class. So why double checking? Because I am checking 2 times. Why locking? Locking is done at here at piece of code for this block for creating this object only. While creating object we should follow the synchronization only, not in the whole method. And since this is volatile, so the very first time I am making any change, so other thread will be also get to know that there is some changes in the object and can directly access the object. Okay, so we'll understand the volatile and the synchronization in detail in another video, but for now just remember that this is used for the multi-threading purpose. Now this is the 4 way that you can create singleton class. So this way the method 4 is the best approach to create any singleton class. Okay, now there are 3 scenarios. Like if your singleton class is implementing serializable interface, at that time, okay, at that time you will have some problem to maintaining the singleton property. When I am saying maintaining singleton property, that means whenever you are trying to get instance of singleton class, then while serializable and deserializable, all the time you will be getting the different object. That means it is breaking the singleton property. That means you will be getting always different object. And the one and only one principle of singleton class is that you should get just only one object of the singleton class. So what happens when any class is serializable, and let's say I am serializing one class more than 2 times, okay, more than 1 times. The first time I am serializing and deserializing, again I am serializing and deserializing. So whenever I am deserializing, I am getting one object, right? Because the task of serialization and deserialization is that you are converting bytecode into the file and sharing over network, that is serializable. And when that is the reverse process, means converting into the the object, so that is the deserialization. Okay, so whenever you are doing deserialization, you are getting the more than one object. Okay, means different object you are getting. So that deserialization breaks the property of singleton class. Okay, so to maintain this, we can still protect from the serialization. Okay, that singleton class will always return the one object by implementing this method, protected object read resolve. So always remember, you have to use this read resolve method and you have to directly return object. Okay, what is the object? This is the object. This is static reference variable that we have given, a singleton object. Okay, so this object will be returned from the singleton class using this read resolve. So when you use this read resolve method, then when that class is serializable, then also you will be getting at the time of deserialization same object, not the different. Okay, so that is the serialization. In case of reflection also, using reflection you can also break the singleton class property. How? Whenever you are using the reflection API, at that time you will be getting the different object of the singleton class. So the one and only one principle of singleton class is that you must have just one object of that singleton class. So how will you stop the for reflection to get the different object? There are multiple way. From the constructor, like let's say in the constructor, if I am throwing some exception, okay, in constructor I am throwing some exception, okay, then reflection will not able to break the property of singleton class. Okay, that there is just one way. You can throw the exception from constructor, or making the instance field final. Which instance field? This private static volatile, right? So you can make this private static final volatile, singleton object equal to null. Okay, so that means if you are making any field final, that means you cannot, reflection cannot make final field to non-final. Okay, so making any instance field final also, you can stop the you can maintain the singleton property. You can save from the reflection. Okay, there are another approach also. You can create as enum. You can create one enum that you can create one enum also. Okay, enum, singleton enum. Here I am creating one instance, and in the constructor of this enum, I am calling this system.out.println just to print out. Okay, so see what is the benefit when you are creating enum. So that means the user cannot directly call the constructor of enum. Okay, this is handled internally. Okay, so you can directly get the instance of the singleton enum. So it will save from the reflection also. So from serialization, you have to implement read resolve method. In the enum, there are three ways. You can either you can throw exception from constructor, or you can make that instance field final, or you can use the enum. Okay, there is one more thing, that is cloning. When you are doing cloning, at that time also it will be when you are using the cloning, at that time also the you can break the property of singleton class. Okay, when you are implementing clonable interface, at that time also. So how you can prevent that? So to do that, you have to implement this clone method and throwing this clone not supported exception. Okay, you have to just add this block, add this method into your class, then you will get always the same object in case of cloning also, because the cloning can create different objects. Whenever you are cloning, you will get different instance. Okay, so you can prevent this in the cloning also by implement this clone method, and you can throw the clone not supported exception. Okay, so these are the questions that is asked in the singleton design pattern, that what is design pattern, types of design pattern, explain singleton design pattern, what is double checked locking or double locking, write a program to create singleton design pattern. Okay, so I hope I am able to make you understand that how you can create a singleton class and how you can maintain the singleton property in case of serialization, in case of cloning, in case of reflection. Okay, if you have any doubt over this over this design pattern, that is singleton design pattern, then please comment in comment box. I will try to answer your question. Thank you.